a little bit later. I'm Deb Linden. I'm your district governor for the rest of this year, and I want to welcome everybody to our 2021 District Training Assembly. We're really excited to have so many people that have signed up this year for the assembly. It's just absolutely amazing. We have over 400 people who registered for the various classes today. I want to acknowledge some important people in the House today. First of all, we have a bunch of past district governors with us at our district training assembly. So if you're a past district governor, just give us a wave in the camera. And we really want to thank all of our past district governors. Dana and Scott and I were talking a little bit this morning about how incredibly supportive our past district governors have been for all of us over the years. And we are so lucky to have them and have them with us today in attending and helping to facilitate some of the sessions as well. I also want to introduce our district governor designate, soon to be nominee, Marta Golding Brown, who is also our training team director. Our district governor nominee, Scott Phillips, who is with us today, and our district governor-elect, Dana Moldovan, who I will introduce a little bit more formally in just a moment. So we have all been through a very, very unique year and our very first virtual Rotary year. But with all of the challenges that brought, what we've also found is the opportunities that has brought. And of course, our theme this year is Rotary Opens Opportunities. And one of those opportunities is being able to hold our trainings and meetings virtually, be able to attract many, many more people and folks from all over without having to travel. And we have really benefited from our virtual environment and being able to deliver meetings and trainings and events to you from all over the district from the comfort of your homes. And that's really been an asset. Our class of our club leaders for 2021-22, an amazing class of club leaders who are attending the training today. And they have some really exciting times ahead of them with our upcoming year. You are the class that will be transitioning us back to in-person meetings and in-person events and in-person fundraisers. So a really exciting, somewhat challenging time with that transition, but we're very, very excited for you. Really important for all of us to remain focused for the rest of this year on finishing strong, on continuing the good work that your clubs have done, incredible work your clubs have done this past year, even though many of us or most of us are still operating in a virtual environment. That includes our really strong focus on membership and on supporting the Rotary Foundation. We still need your help in both of those areas. So even though today is all about that transition, it's all about looking forward. It's all about bringing new information and new training, especially to our incoming club officers. Don't forget to finish this year really, really strong. So that's really important. So with that, I'm really excited to introduce your district governor-elect, Dana Moldovan. And Dana keeps telling us, oh, well, everybody knows me. Well, I think Dana is an absolutely amazing and absolutely fascinating person. So I wanted to take a moment and just tell you a little bit more about her, because I have a feeling that most of you really don't know her and don't know her background. So Dana is originally from Romania, where she started a high-tech company. And after selling her company, Dana began working full-time on humanitarian issues, including starting a nonprofit organization, Children's Skills for Life, whose mission is to help children build their future through education. Dana joined Rotary in 2002 and is a member of the Rotary Club of Westlake Village. She's held many different Rotary positions, including Intercountry Committee General Secretary and National Coordinator for the United States. Dana is also part of Rotary International Action Group for Peace. Dana has traveled extensively for Rotary projects. She's participated in polio immunization campaigns in Nigeria and India, and has traveled to Honduras, El Salvador, Nigeria, Israel, India, Mexico, and Turkey to remain involved in various projects. Dana has a passion for peace and conflict resolution and for women's rights. She participated on several missions of reconciliation, working with minorities of Syria, and was involved in peace-building projects in Israel. She's an active member of Mediators Beyond Borders International. Dana has attended so far 11 Rotary International conventions and has made presentations in peace and conflict resolution and prevention projects at Rotary International conventions, zone institutes, and peace conferences. She is a trained mediator and has a master's degree in electrical engineering and telecommunications, a certificate in business management from UCLA, and a master's degree in dispute resolution from Pepperdine University. I am absolutely thrilled to call her my friend, to have her part of our district governor team. She's going to be a fabulous, fabulous governor next year. So it's my pleasure to introduce and turn it over to Dana.
Thank you very much, District Governor Deb Linden. Thank you for this introduction. And I'm so happy to be here with everybody. So as Deb was saying, we have about 400 people for this district training assembly, which I think it's a record number. This is a training that we are having every year about this time, and it is for all Rotarians to get a chance to learn a little bit more about our wonderful organization. We are going to have multiple sessions, breakout sessions in 3 sets. And maybe you are going to feel, oh my God, but actually I want to see this one and that one, and they're in the same time. So actually, this is the beauty of Zoom. We are going to record everything, and in about a couple of weeks, all the recordings are going to be available to you. So you can review what you've seen, or you can see something else. Or if you really think that the session that you attended are good for somebody else from your club, you can point them to watch them. Okay, and we wanted to start this morning with an inspirational speaker. And we started thinking, okay, whom should we invite? And I'm so excited to tell you that Brittany Arthur said yes to our invitation, and she's here with us this morning. Thank you, Brittany, for being here. So just a few information about Brittany. So she is a co-founder of Design Thinking Japan, a human-created design agency based in Japan, which is supporting companies to ignite creative confidence by equipping people with tools for innovation and to bring their business aspiration to life. She is the host of the only bilingual innovation podcast called Business Karaoke, which is English Japanese. And her equal passion for work is doubled by her passion for Rotary. So Brittany is a member of the Rotary Club of Berlin International. She is a past Rotary Foundation scholar, a past president of the Rotary Club of Berlin, and the past vice chair of the Rotary International Joint Committee for Young Leaders and Alumni Engagement. One more time, Brittany, thank you very much for being here with us this morning. I'm so excited that you are here. We heard a little bit of your presentation in PETS, and it was way too short. So I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you very much, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the invitation, Dana and Deb. I really do appreciate it. And I also just want to take a second to highlight my Marta and Marilyn, who've been absolute all stars in organizing everything on the back end. So thank you to them. But most importantly, thank you to you. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for showing up for you. Thank you for showing up for your club. Thank you for showing up for Rotary today, because you people are very, very busy people, and making time on a Saturday morning for Rotary, even though maybe, it's something that we kind of got used to, never think that it doesn't go without being seen. So thank you so much for that. So on that note, guys, we have 30 minutes together. We have 30 minutes together. Again, I want to make sure that this is not just kind of me talking and kind of you listening. This is one of the most important things about these events, is that we really have this two-way dialogue. Make sure we use the chat. If you have questions, let's use the chat. We have 30 minutes together. And the way that I wanted to do this, maybe by, just either just having met me just quite briefly, you probably might get the idea that I could talk for 30 minutes uninterrupted, no problem, right? That's absolutely not a problem for me. However, that's not what it's about. I really want to make sure that we create time for questions and for sharing as well. So let's kind of make sure that we get through what I want to share with you, and then we can open the floor for discussion, observations, questions, all that kind of stuff. Does that sound good? If that sounds good to you, give me either a physical thumbs up or give me a digital thumbs up to you. Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right. So as Dana mentioned, that I work with Design Thinking Japan, which is essentially a human-centered design agency. So what we do is we design for the human. And people often say, gee, you know, working with Japan and working with Rotary, like that's just so different, right? It must be so different. And if you think about it, this is kind of my work in Japan. We walk into an organization, they're usually 100 years old plus, and they say things like, we want to innovate, but we don't know how. I say, okay, well, what about this idea? And they go, no, we tried that 10 years ago. It didn't work. We go, okay, what about this idea? No, that didn't really work either. And then what you recognize is actually, I hear this often in Rotary as well, 100 years old plus, you know, you've got an idea. How about we try this idea? No, we did it 10 years ago. It doesn't work. So essentially what we want to do is that we want to start in designing for the person. And the reason that we want to start designing for the person, and you'll see that this human-centric design is not only relevant for businesses, or it's not only relevant for organizations, but it's most certainly relevant also for Rotary. And I want to talk to you a little bit about why that is. So beginning with the human in mind, beginning with the human experience enables us to come up with creative solutions to problems, right? And so in order to kind of like talk about that, I'd love to share with you an image that maybe like might make it make sense, right? So can everyone see this? It's called Double Diamond. Can you see it? Perfect. Okay. So on the very left-hand side is something called a challenge. This is where we begin with, maybe we want to open up we want to build a new business, or we want to design a new product or a new service, whatever that might be. And maybe in Rotary, it's that you want to create like a new service, and we want to increase our membership, whatever that might be. The most important thing about this double diamond structure is that we begin with the problem space, and that's separate from the solution space, right? And the reason why that's so important is because in order for us to come up with really great solutions is that we really need to understand the problem. So people often say we need, you know, creativity in our solutions, but that's not only true. Of course, we need creativity in our solutions, but we also need creativity in how we approach the problem, right? So the other thing that we need to keep in mind when we're doing kind of human-centered design is that we split thinking up into two parts, into divergence and to convergence, right? So I want to just kind of stop. I want you to kind of have that image in mind. And now I want to ask, this is where I ask all of you guys a question, okay? And you can use your digital hands or your physical hands, okay? Divergence is when we want to gather data, right? And the most important thing when it comes to designing for people, when it comes to bringing innovation into our workplaces, is speed, because things move fast, guys. I'm sure that you've seen Rotary clubs that, you know, immediately kind of, you know, picked up on Zoom and started running meetings, but there were other Rotary clubs that said, well, let's just wait and see how things pan out, right? And it's been a year now, and they've lost like a year of essentially their development. So let me ask you this question. When you think about, you know, coming up with an idea, imagine that we're in a Rotary meeting together, right? And someone says, we have an idea, or we need to come up with ideas. Maybe we need to come up with new ideas for service projects. Maybe we need to come up with new ideas for membership, whatever that might be. And you put up your hand and you say, what about this idea? And they go, we tried that a couple of years ago and it didn't work. And you go, okay, what about this idea? And they go, isn't it a little expensive? And you put up your hand and you go, what about this idea? And they say, oh, I don't think we have the kind of resources to execute on that. Has that happened to anyone? Please put up your hand right now. Digital or physical, both work. All right. Guys, I'm seeing a few hands here. Okay, now I'm seeing a few hands. All right, now the other thing so now hands down for that one, because I have another question, right? The next thing is, imagine that we're in a Rotary meeting, we have 1 hour and we have to make a decision. It's a board meeting, or it's a meeting on membership, it's a committee meeting. And we have 1 hour and 55 minutes go past and we finally decide, okay, let's go ahead with project A, right? Yes, okay, everyone's kind of on board and we go ahead with project A. 5 minutes before we finish, someone puts up their hand and says, I get A. A's great. A's really great. But don't you think we should spend a little bit more time talking about project B? Doesn't this other project deserve our attention? And you're looking at your watches and you're going, oh my gosh, guys, how are we ever supposed to cover this detail in this amount of time? Has that ever happened to anyone either? It's like, as you're walking out the door, someone's like, let's do this other totally different thing. Okay, so that's happened to people as well. Guys, these two things, divergence and convergence, there's no good or bad. So the most important thing is that when we're talking about innovation, when we're talking about people, is that we need speed. And in order to have speed, what do we need? We need communication. We need to make sure that everybody's having the same conversation at the same time, right? So when we're sitting down with our board of directors, or we're sitting down with our club and we're saying we're going to talk about divergence for 15 minutes, for example, that means everybody is going to be talking about ideas. The reason why that's really important is because then you don't get the roadblocks. You don't get but what about risk? What about insurance? What about what we did 10 years ago? That conversation comes at a later time. Firstly, what you want to do is put all the ideas on the board, whatever that might be, right? Another really important thing is it doesn't even have to be for creating new products, services, service projects, or whatever it might be. Maybe just the next time you're hosting your board meeting, get everyone to write down what their question is, like the number one thing that they need to take away from that meeting. Because often our meetings are designed by time, not by goals. Right? So we end up talking about one topic for 50 minutes, but actually the 8 other people in the room also had questions, right? So when we're in that divergence phase, we want to make sure that we open up the floor to everybody's voices. This is really important in Rotary, because if you think about, if your club is this, if you think in the last 5 years, let me ask you this. In the last 5 years, has your club increased its members? Yes or no? Yes. Okay. Is your club the same culture as it was 5 years ago? And if the answer is no, I'm really happy, and I'll tell you why. In bringing new people into an organization is like having another child, is that it will change the family dynamic. And so if you seek those clubs that have had, they've increased in membership, but for the last 10 years, they're essentially the same feeling of a club. Well, the new people that have joined this club essentially don't exist. They're not being listened to, they're not being heard. So what we want to do is we really do want to create that space where people operate with their strength. So if if you bring someone that's from a different industry or whatever into your club, make sure that they bring their network, their ideas. That's what we're looking for, right? So when we're thinking about divergence and convergence, when it comes to designing for people in our club, right, what we really want to do is make sure that we split those conversations, because there is going to be people, like, let me ask you guys, who, if you were to say that you would be more divergence, which is like someone who comes up with new ideas, but you're not really maybe the best executor, but you're really great at kind of like lighting the fire for other people. Or are you kind of more the other person that's like, you're not really great, with coming up with something from 0 to nothing, but if you give me 1, I can take it to 100, that you're more like that execution kind of person? Who would say that they're kind of more divergence, which is like beginning with nothing and building something? Okay. Who would say that they're kind of better at taking something and then scaling that into like really something much bigger? Who's probably better at that? Okay, that's really great. What we want is we want these two kinds of people, because if we're all diverging, what happens? We get nothing done, right? We get nothing done. But if we're all converging, well, we don't begin with any ideas, right? So in your Rotary clubs, when someone's like, oh, you're being a negative Nelly or negative Nancy, whatever it is, you keep saying no. No, this person is essential, because they're looking out, are our finances in order? Are we, they're asking these really critical questions. They're really important questions, but they feel like a roadblock if you're in the divergence phase. When you're thinking up with ideas and someone says, but what about insurance? And you're like, oh gosh, I don't know about insurance. Let's deal with it later, right? But if you're in convergence and you've all decided on something, and then someone comes up and then I say, hey guys, shouldn't we do this other thing? And you're like, oh my gosh, we've spent 4 weeks building this idea and now you want to change everything. You know what I mean? So this is what we want to do. We want to make sure that we have a balance of divergent and convergent conversations when it comes to building new things in our clubs, right? So let's go back to our picture, and I just want to talk to you a little bit about it. All right. So here, the number one thing, guys, is when we want to come up with a challenge, right? When we're thinking about our challenges, we've got to, maybe, it could be, let's start a service project, or we want to, increase membership, right? Let's take the increased membership as an example. Let's say we begin with membership. What's the first thing that we usually do? We're like, let's start a membership committee. Let's, do this. Let's run like a membership night or whatever. So we've gone straight into what you can see on the right-hand side, which is solutioning, right? But what we want to do is whenever we have a question in our Rotary clubs, maybe it's how are we going to spend our money this year? Maybe it's how do we want to increase our members? Don't begin with the solutions. Take the time to invest in the problem. The reason why this is so important is because if we are a nonprofit organization, we have to be extra careful with our resources. Often people say, well, we're volunteering, so, you can't hold me accountable to that. No, because we're volunteering, because we're all doing this for free, we need to make sure that we have the best possible experience. So the same way that we, if we think about, coming up with something new or having new products or services, just because we're not getting paid is not a good idea when people say, oh, well, it's my free time anyway. No, we've got to make sure that we use our time really well. So when it comes to the problem space, guys, this is when we first do this thing called understand. So imagine that you're the membership committee, and the challenge is we want to increase our membership, or we want to increase our retention of our current members, right? Let's go into understand. That means, in the problem space of understanding, means we want to talk to our users. And in this case, our users are Rotary Club members, right? And so what do? That means we sit down with everybody, not just 5 people who would stay in the club anyway. I mean, talk to people who probably would leave the club and say, hey, we want to understand why you joined Rotary in the first place. Why do you like Rotary? What don't you like about Rotary? What are some of the things that you wish we did more of, right? So in this first space is understanding. Once you gather data from all different kinds of people, you then move into what's called the define phase. So imagine it's kind of like maybe you had 6 or 7 conversations with different people, and then you come together and you look at what these 6 or 7 people said, and you look at, did they say anything in common? Did they have any common threads, right? And then maybe the common thread is, well, I have this skill. Or for example, sometimes, and I'm sure Dana's probably had this after, having a high-tech business, is the first job is always, Dana, great, you had a high-tech business. Can you do our website? And Dana's like, there was a lot more to running a high-tech business than a website. For example, business strategy, I was able to sell it for a profit. There's so much more that went behind, but I'm sure probably people asked her, hey, can you be like our IT guy? That happened in my Rotaract club, that we had these, I'm not Rotaract anymore, but we had a few people join that were like in the tech side of things, and they joined Rotaract because they actually joined a service project. And we did the absolute failure thing where we said, great, now that you've come to a service project and you want to join Rotaract, can you run our website? And you know what they said? They said, okay, we can run it. But 2 to 3 weeks later, they stopped coming. And I was like, gee, that's weird. Why did they stop coming? So we started talking to them. We said, hey, where have you guys been? And they said, we came to Rotaract to do something different. I do IT all day long. I came to Rotaract because I wanted to do something different. So rather than thinking, okay, this guy's or this girl's a IT guy, let's put them into IT. No, that's beginning in the solution space, right? That's wrong. We have to go back and understand the problem. So the problem is kind of more of a challenge. It's not necessarily like something bad is happening, but it's like something you want to do better. So then we talked to them and said, well, what would you like to do? And they said, well, I actually want to get involved more in service projects. So someone who has an IT background joined Rotaract to be in part of service. So what we did was put them in a service chair, in an IT chair. They didn't want that. They wanted to be in a service chair. So taking the time to deeply understand the problem space, to deeply connect with your members, do a complete survey of each person and say, hey, I know you've been doing youth exchange for the last 15 years, but do you still want to do it? And if they say yes, that's great. But maybe they might say no. Maybe they want to do something different. Or maybe someone else says, hey, I'd really love to do youth exchange, but blah, blah's been doing it for 15 years, so I don't really want to encroach. And blah, blah saying, I've been doing this for 15 years. Can somebody else please do it? So this is what we really want to do. When we understand the problem space, where are we? So we begin with a challenge, which is how do we increase membership? Right? Then we've gone through the understand phase, which is talking to our club members. Then we've defined, which is we've taken the conversations from our club members and then we've kind of summarized them. And then we've reframed the problem. So our challenge, which was increase membership, became actually, how might we make sure that each person in this club is playing to their strengths or is playing to their interests? That's a totally different question than increased membership, right? So once we start thinking about, once we ask a better question, because we know better solutions come from better questions, right? So if we start thinking about how can we ask better questions in our club, the same way, maybe it's a service project. Maybe the service project is we have $5,000, we want to spend it, or we have $10,000, we want to spend it. So I know someone at this school, let's give it to the school. Maybe after talking to the school principal says, you know what, guys, we don't even need $10,000. We need someone who will sit with a kid for 1 hour a day and do their homework. Because currently right now with the pandemic, their parents are not only managing a house, but they're also managing their jobs. And there's just not enough time for people to sit down and do homework. So maybe this $10,000 isn't what they need. Maybe they need a homework buddy kind of solution. But we wouldn't know that. We wouldn't know that if we didn't ask the question. If we didn't involve our users in our problem finding space. So our users could be our Rotary Club members if we're, designing a solution internally for us, or our users are the external users, for example, are the communities that we serve. Often we'll show up with a check or we'll show up with something. But the people that we're actually serving haven't been involved in that decision. What we want to do is involve people in the problem space so that, we can then go and make sure that we're really building the right solution. So once we build the right solution, or once we kind of reframe the problem and we've moved from increased membership to maybe make sure that each person in the club is heard, or maybe it's even just make sure that we talk to everyone at least once a year or once a quarter, whatever that might be, then we go into something called ideation, which is only then after making sure we're asking the right question, do we come up with solutions. Right? So solutions can be things, that's when you can think about your fundraisers or whatever that might be. The other thing that I'd really encourage you to think about maybe being able to use a little bit more in your club is the idea of a prototype, right? In Rotary, sometimes our service projects, particularly if they're like a global grant, can just take 2 to 3 years. Like sometimes they're just so long, and the world has changed. Imagine people that applied for a grant like 2 years ago versus the world today. The world is different. Imagine building a school, that you put in like a global grant to build a school 2 years ago. This school has to look totally different than your original proposal. Totally different, right? So if we think about how might we be able to prototype things a little bit, this is how might we be able to take our idea and test it. Maybe it's even just, drawing up a poster of it, or maybe it's, building it on a smaller scale. But what we want to do is we want to get into the business or into the routine of learning. Because often in Rotary, what we do is we come up with a great project, we hand it over and we go, here's the project, and we're done, right? But that's not it. What we want to do is actually, once we kind of finish a project, how do we make sure that we get feedback from that person? How, the well that we built or the school that we built, how was it? Or if it's like an internal thing, how did we ask, for example, our people, hey, we ran this fundraiser. Did you enjoy it? Was it good? Was it boring? Would you come again? Would you bring a friend? So what we want to do in the solution space is not only launch solutions, but we want to launch solutions with the purpose of learning so that next time we get better, right? And the reason we want to do that is because Rotary's been around for 100 years plus, so 116, I think now. What we want to do is make sure that that's true for another 100 years. And in order to do that, we need to make sure that we involve the community and our clubs in our decision-making process. And the best thing about this kind of user-centric approach to making things different or thinking different is that you don't have to do it all on your own. And this is kind of one other thing is that kind of in Rotary, we're kind of a little bit used to, we should have the right answer. We should go in with the right answer. We should get things right. You know what I mean? Because we're dealing with people. We're in the business of people, right? I forgot which Rotary International president said that, but I remember he said, we're in the business of people. And this is true. And when it comes to people, we don't want to get things wrong, right? We don't want to. We don't want to go and, build a school or something in a community where they needed something else, where they needed a hospital before they needed a school, right? What we want to do is when we're in the business of people, make sure that they're involved in our decision-making process. That might be true for our Rotary Club, but it also might be true for our service projects. So on that note, guys, I'd like to hand over to you for any questions, any observations right now. Also, one other thing that I just remembered that I would love to do is when it comes to these online things, one thing that we kind of like forget a little bit is to connect with each other. So if anyone has any questions, if they have anything that they would like to follow up on, or if no matter what it is, I'm currently writing down in the chat where you can find me, the best two places you can find me. And I am there. You can ask me any questions. I'm here for you. So on that note, I wanted to hand it back to you. This is now your space. You can either raise your hand. I see that your name says Ian Jacobson, but I'm guessing maybe that was because your husband, perhaps someone like recently used the account. So I'm seeing Ian Jacobson with a hand up, but hey Ian, do you want to go ahead and ask a question?
Well, I just want to make an observation, and that is, I've been in change management for most of my career. And you gotta sell the problem before you can sell the solution. And in order to, in terms of selling the problem, talking about membership, the first question is, what problem do we have with membership?
That's it.
Most of our clubs, the membership problem is that we're getting older and older and older, not bringing in more people, and we're going to die if we don't bring in new people. And so that then becomes the sort of thing, we need to do something if we're going to survive as an organization. And that then becomes the reason for why you want to build membership.
Absolutely. And Ian, let me also ask you this question. When it comes to asking better questions around membership, Ian brought up the idea of, we're doing it because, we have to stay alive, we have to stay alive in the future as an organization. This is true. Let's also think about why is there that gap then? Is there that gap because there are younger people, they're looking at Rotary and they're not feeling connected? Why are they not feeling connected? Is it not fun? Do they feel like, oh, I have to have accomplished something in my life in order to become a Rotarian? When you invest, as Ian mentioned, when you invest in the time to understand what the problem is, the solution doesn't end up being that difficult anymore. Because once you understand what we're solving for, then it's very clear, do we need a fundraiser? Well, if we take, for example, like Ian's point of, well, that doesn't sound like we need a fundraiser if that's the issue. What it sounds like is maybe we need something that's more about connecting or maybe building more of a pipeline. So then fundraisers are out. Right? So once we understand, we ask a better question, the solution not only improves in quality, but it also isn't that difficult to think of anymore, right? And often when we sit down and we think, increase membership, what can we do? Who else feels like, oh God, I don't know. We've been talking about it for 15 years. I don't know. We've tried everything. You know what I mean? The idea is when we're talking about membership or when we're talking about whatever it is, ask a really good question. And you know what? Asking a really good question is very connected to, and in you working in change management, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as well, is it requires honesty. It requires honesty and it requires listening. So when a club member tells you, I want to do more, but I want to do more in this area, or a club member says, I still want to be a Rotarian, but I'm tired at the moment because I have other stuff going on in my life. Please take this board member, kind of position, or please, give it to someone else. You have to listen. Don't say, oh, gee, you can't leave, because we don't have anyone else to take over Youth Exchange. Please keep doing it. No, listen, we've got to create a space where people feel that they feel comfortable to be honest. And then when they are honest, really listen to them, really try to listen. Great point. Any other questions, observations, guys?
John Baxter had his hand up. John, can you unmute yourself? Let me unmute you. There you go.
Okay. I loved your conversation, especially about ideas. I'm an idea person too. I just want to make a quick comment when it comes to membership. Some observations about different social settings. And I heard this once, actually a couple times now from actually churches, when it said, if a person doesn't feel connected to at least 7 people in their organization, they're not going to stay.
You got it.
And I've noticed sometimes that people, they'll look like just floating from different, trying to fit in somehow. or the churches where they actually put them together and say, you're with this group, or I don't care if it's for something within the Rotary or something within, but they start to feel connected to, and so to getting those smaller groups within Rotary, I think has some value to it. I'd like your opinion on that.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And more than ever, we're in the business of people, both our members and also the communities that we serve. So we have to, and it's kind of, guys, and I have to be honest, we're not that we're kind of in a tough situation, but we always have two stakeholders. It's the people inside our club and the communities that we serve, which means we always have to be thinking in this kind of like dual mindset. How do we make sure that this experience is meaningful to our members, but also we have to make sure, how do we make sure this is in service of the communities? And I couldn't agree more that it requires a village. There's a reason why Rotary clubs have a minimum number of people. If you think a little bit about even your own experience, everyone just reflect on your own experience. If there's times that you've maybe only connected with 1 or 2 people in your clubs, if that one person doesn't come, then you don't come. Right. And then you kind of get this terrible like chain reaction, and maybe you're the reason somebody else comes. And so if you don't come because your person's not coming, and you don't go so that other person who comes because of you doesn't come, we get this terrible kind of chain reaction. So what we want to do is, as you mentioned, John, when it comes to membership, maybe having conversations with your members and ask them, what makes you feel connected? What makes you come to a Rotary meeting? And they say things like, you know what, I really want, it's important for me to feel like connected to others. So maybe one, or maybe connected with other people, right? So we go from the question of membership. How do we increase members? During kind of like our understand and define phase, we understood that it requires different connections for people. Then our new question is what, guys? Our new question is, how do we make sure our members are connected with, have diverse connection points, right? So then what's our solution? Our solution is maybe something like a you can't sit in the same spot twice, or you have like a musical chairs type thing, where every kind of like one meeting you're here, but then you have to make sure you sit next to someone else another meeting. Or you can even do like a 30-minute, like during lunch or something. Maybe one day you don't have a speaker, and on that day you have 30 minutes and you do like musical chairs, and every 10 minutes you like change, right? And you can do this remotely as well. But as John just mentioned, when we start talking about membership as this huge topic, you just you get really, I have to be honest, like really boring results, because the question's boring, right? So once we kind of invest more in deeply understanding the question, how do we make people feel heard? How do we make sure that people have diverse connection points? Our solutions get more interesting. And what I just mentioned, guys, it's free. It doesn't cost any money. You don't have to invest in any CRM or anything like that. It's just get up and sit next to somebody else. Like, that's it, right? Great point, John. Thank you so much. Any other thoughts, guys? Even just observations, doesn't have to be a question. This for me is kind of like a peer-to-peer learning space. It's not necessarily like I have the answers. Like, I'm sure there's many other people that have different, answers on the call as well. So feel free to use it even as just a talking space.
We're getting a little tight on time, Brittany. So I think unless there's a burning question out there, we're going to turn it back over to Dana. Thank you so much.
Well, maybe we can do this, because one thing, I guess, because I'd love to hear also, not only just from me, but also for you guys, is maybe just in the chat, guys, just write down so we can kind of like read along, because you're important. You are important. You are very important to Rotary. Just, share maybe in the chat something that stood out to you, maybe a learning, or maybe even something that you'd like to try, not only for you, but also for others. So on that point, everyone, my details are up the top in the chat. So go ahead and connect with me. And on that note, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to you. And the thing that I want you to walk away with is, we don't need crazy technology, AI, VR solutions. That's not what we need. We just need to ask better questions, and that will bring us to those better answers. And, the thing that's really great about human-centered design is that we're all humans. We're all humans, which means that, automatically by default, that we're all human-centered designers. So on that note, everyone, I wish you a wonderful day, and I'm looking forward to seeing you all in the very near future.
Thank you very, very much, Brittany. I hope that everybody is in agreement that this was an excellent presentation. I really feel the energy. I want to jump off my chair and go and do stuff. go and talk to everybody and so on and so forth. And I'm so happy that this is getting recorded because for sure I want to go back and listen to it one more time. And also, if you think that this is good, I think that you might be able to use it with your club meetings. Maybe this can be like play the recording for one of your sessions. And you never know, maybe you try to invite Brittany to come to your club. Thank you one more time. This was like so good. Thank you. And right now, we are going to get ready to move into our breakout sessions at 10 o'clock, but please try to join 5 minutes before to make sure that everything is working fine and you find the right links and so on and so forth. So I hope that everybody got the email again this morning from Chess, our registrar. Chess, if you are around, thank you very much. And you know where you are going, and everything is going to be smooth. If you have like any problems, please reach out to Marta and Marilyn. And I will take like this opportunity to thank Marilyn for really working very hard on putting all of this together and working every single detail. And of course, Marta, our DGD, and also the training director. And I know that other people work very hard. So Deb, for sure, as our DG, she was highly involved, and many, many other people that make sure that everything is going to run smooth this morning. Thank you. And I think that we can...
Mulțumesc. Mulțumesc, Dana.
Oh, thank you. This is thank you in Romanian. This is so nice of you, Brittany. Thank you. Okay, so I think that we can take a break, and please try to join 5 minutes before 10 o'clock, okay?
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Enjoy, guys. Bye. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you. Thank you, Brittany.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Brittany.
Goodbye.
Thanks. Very great.
Thank you. Goodbye.